Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So here I am in Chiavari. I'm going to talk about Vittorio Emmanuel II. So he was the first king of Italy, apart from Napoleon. Most wouldn't count him. So this is his image behind me. He was born in Turin in 1820. So his father was Charles Albert, King of Sardinia Piedmont. He was Austrian on his mother's side. And of course he began fighting against his relatives on that side, the Habsburgs, as in the rulers of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which comprised much of northern Italy. So anyway, he was brought up by private tutors, preceptors, mostly Catholic priests, which again is quite ironic since he clashed with the Catholic Church a lot, as we shall see. So his father had embraced the Italian nationalist cause, and Victor Emmanuel II continued in that vein. What were his political views? Fairly conservative, but of course he did like the idea of aggrandizement. So the island of Sardinia they ruled, in Piedmont, and where we are now, Liguria, was part of Piedmont by that time. Sometime before that, the Republic of Genoa had included where we are right now. So he's a man who rejoiced in this splendid bushy moustache. That's what the Habsburgs favoured. Maybe it's from his mother's side of the family. He got the idea he should have one of those. So he was quite conventional for a man of his time and his class. So his prime minister for some of that time was Count Camillo di Cavour. And he was not on board with the ideas of radical Italian nationalists like Mazzini or Garibaldi, who are also honoured very close to here. Anyway, but he was the consummate diplomat, deal maker, forged alliances with Napoleon III, who was Emperor of France. And Napoleon III had this very complicated relationship with Italian nationalism. Of course, you know, his parent, well, his father had been born in Corsica, Louis, that's the younger brother of Napoleon Bonaparte. And Napoleon III had spent a lot of his life in Switzerland when he was little, and became very attracted to Italian nationalism there when he met exiles from it. But how much of this was cynical? Was he just trying to extend the borders of France as his uncle Napoleon the Great had done? But anyway, he was Victor Emmanuel II great at forming alliances with France and the United Kingdom, for example, dispatching his soldiers to fight in the Crimean War, 1853 to 56, just to curry a bit of favour with them. And he realised that he couldn't do it on his own. Italian nationalism was not that popular in Italy. This is Il Risorgimento. So trying to get all of Italy united, ideally under him, and independent, none of it ruled by Austria or anywhere else. So somewhat successful in the Piedmontese War, and then exploiting opportunities as they arose. The Austro-Prussian War, as really because the Prussians inflicted such a crushing defeat on the Austrians in the Battle of Sadowa, also known as Königgrätz. It's now in the Czech Republic, that he was able to take more land in northern Italy. You know, so sometimes Napoleon III had let him down, got cold feet about pushing the Austrians all the way out, wanted to quit where he was ahead of the battles of Solferino and Magenta. Another thing to point out is he had to cede Nice in 1860 to France. His father had abdicated in 1858 in favour of him, and he lived on several years. So willing to make concessions when he needed to, and smart enough not to take on stronger enemies than he could defeat, because Napoleon III decided to adopt the mantle of the protector of Catholicism, send French troops to Rome, saying, yes, I'm in favour of Italian unification, but they can't have Rome because the Pope rules Rome. Now, of course, in France, like 90% of people were Catholic, a bit of anti-clericalism then, dating back to the 18th century. So, so the Pope's got to rule that, and Napoleon III thought that would appeal to the cruel thumper constituency in France, as in cruel thumper as in banging their chest, beating their breast, mea culpa. A bit of a holy Joe or a creeping Jesus or whatever, who do whatever the Pope wanted. So there are all sorts of Catholics, and the Catholics, like plenty of them in Italy, say, well, yes, we are Catholics, but the Pope is wrong. The Pope should not be a secular ruler, and we want Rome to be the capital of our country. Anyway, so he decided to bide his time, And in 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. So again, he achieved his goals with the help of mighty allies. So not just Prussia, but all the other 35 German states fighting against France, and the French needed every man they could get, withdrew their troops from Rome, and therefore the new Italian army marched in. Remember, the Kingdom of Italy being proclaimed in 1861 with him as king. It was actually legislation by the Parliament of Sardinia Piedmont in Turin, and Turin is briefly the capital of Italy. So it's the very northwest corner. So curiously, the very northwest of Italy did so much to unite the country. Garibaldi and Mazzini also come from this part of the country. And that's why in southern Italy they weren't really that keen on it. Their dialect of Italian is very different. They sort of thought they were treated with disdain by northern Italians. They felt more haughty, they were perhaps more French than Italian, and that's why standard Italian is much closer to French than it is to some of the southern dialects. Anyway, so by 1870 his troops went into Rome, and the Swiss Guard, they put up token resistance just to prove that the Pope had not taken this lying down. The Pope had not consented, and some people were killed. Isn't that a bit immoral? I mean, the Pope, you're supposed to promote peace and avoid bloodshed. Now, if you're fighting what you really think is a just cause and really fighting to win, that's one thing. But fighting when you know you're going to lose, fighting not even seriously, I think, well, who should be killed just for the sake of a gesture? But anyway, he marched into Rome, he was the king, and so the Pope excommunicated him for that. He still viewed himself as a Catholic to the end of his days. And so there were loads of Italians, well, 98% of Italians being Catholics then, hearing Mass and considering themselves good Catholics, but disobeying the Pope on this issue. The Pope said he still had to be the secular ruler of certainly of Rome and ideally the whole of the Papal States, Bologna and much of central Italy. And this was very contentious in the Catholic world. Like Garibaldi, he was loathed in Ireland by nationalists, because nationalists, like 9 out of 10 of them, were Catholics, and said, no, we obey the Pope, you can't possibly have Rome. That's anti-Catholic. Anyway, whereas he was cheered by Protestants in England, usually. So Victor Emmanuel is proclaimed King of Italy, and he managed to find a modus vivendi with Garibaldi, and famously they met at Teano. Garibaldi was an anti-monarchist in principle, but accepted that the only way to unite Italy was to have a monarch. He seemed to me to be the mightiest one around, largely broadly acceptable, so he took over. Now, he was unsympathetic to the cause of reform, believed only a minority of men should have the right to vote, had no truck with more rights for women, and had never advocated things like the abolition of slavery abroad, wondering how he could acquire more colonies overseas. But I think, as Cavour said, first we've made Italy, now we must make Italians, as in form some sort of sense of national identity. It was compulsory military service back then. Remember, a lot of people were illiterate in those days, so try and get more people to go to school. Eventually everybody got to go to school, and jumble people around in the army, but also move them to the other Italy. If they're from Sicily, send them to the Alps. If from the Alps, send them to Sardinia, or if they're from Lombardy, send them to Puglia, that kind of thing. So they've seen the rest of the country. That somewhat backfired when people saw just how foreign different regions were. Remember, the train was only invented in 1825, so it was only in his reign that railways were beginning to spread across Italy, particularly northern Italy, usually built by British engineers. Quite a high opinion of the UK, a good constitutional monarchy. The United Kingdom perhaps more sympathetic to his cause than anybody else. Why? Maybe to weaken Austria, and if Austria's weakened, the most likely candidate to come in and take much of Italy would have been France. The French were already Rome. The United Kingdom didn't want that. Their imperial rival getting mighty, getting even more